शलाक्यम् चक्षुरुन्मिलितं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरुवे नमः। श्रीचैतन्यमनोभीष्टं स्थापितं येन भूतले स्वयं रूपकदा मायं ददाति स्वपदान्तिकम्। वन्देऽहं श्रीगुरुन् श्रीयुतापदकमलम् श्रीगुरुन् वैष्णवं च श्रीरूपं साग्रजातम् सहगना रघुनाथान्वितं तं सजीवम् साद्वैतं स्वावधूतं परिजनासाहितं कृष्ण चैतन्यदेवम् श्रीराधा कृष्णपादान् सहगना ललिता श्रीविशाखान्वितं च। हे कृष्णा करुणा सिन्धो दीनबन्धो जगत्पते गोपीश गोपिका कान्ता राधा कान्ता नमोऽस्तुते। सप्त काञ्चन गौराङ्गी राधे वृन्दावनेश्वरी वृषभानुसुते देवी प्रणमामि हरिप्रिये। पाञ्चकल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपा सिन्धुभ्येव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः। जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौरभक्तवृंद। हरे कृष्णा कृष्ण कृष्ण हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे। हरे कृष्ण।
Hare Krishna, Shashwin. Thank you for the wonderful Mangalacharan recital. Is it possible for you to recite text 30 as well?
Yes, Mataji. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskrityam Naram Chaya Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayamudhirayet. Nastaprayesvabhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavatyuttama Shloki Bhaktir Bhavati Naistiki. Hare Krishna. Tatapi Vatamedayyo Yatma Chaivatmana Tibu Asampanna Ivabhati Brahmavarchasya Sattama.
Hare Krishna. Thank you very much, Shashwin. Prabhuji, should we continue with the word-to-word translation and purport?
That's fine if any of the devotees want to.
Okay. Shashwin, is Lata Mataji with you? Or Kumar Prabhuji?
Krishna Mataji.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji. Danvat Pranam. Is it possible for you to do word-to-word, Prabhuji?
Let me try, Mataji. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Tathapi, although, bata, defect, may, Daya
situated in the body.
situated in the body.
Situated in the body.
He
He
certainly
certainly.
Atma,
Atma,
living being,
living being.
Living being.
Cha,
Cha
Cha
and
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 Eva,
Eva,
even
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 Atmana,
Atmana,
myself,
myself.
myself.
Vibhuhi,
Vibhu,
sufficient,
sufficient.
Sufficient.
Asambannaha,
Asampana,
wanting in,
wanting in.
Wanting in.
Iva Abadi,
Eva apati,
Abati
it appeared to be.
it appears to be.
appears to be.
Brahma Varsasya,
Brahma
Brahma
Varsya
Vasya
Ukta Vedantis,
of the
of
Vedantas.
Vedantis.
Satama,
Satamaha,
the Supreme.
the Supreme.
Supreme.
Hare Krishna, thank you very much. Arya Govind Prabhuji, is it possible for you to read the translation and purport? It is very short.
Yes, Mataji. Hare Krishna. Thank you. Translation. I am feeling incomplete, though I myself am fully equipped with everything required by the Vedas. Purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jai.
Okay.
Undoubtedly, Srila Vyasadeva was complete in all the details of the Vedic achievements. Purification of the living being submerged in matter is made possible by the prescribed activities in the Vedas. But the ultimate achievement is different. Unless it is attained, the living being, even though fully equipped, cannot be situated in the transcendentally normal stage. Srila Vyasadeva appeared to have lost the clue and therefore felt dissatisfaction. Hare Krishna. Thank you, Mataji.
Hare Krishna, thank you, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. Dandavat Pranam. Please accept our humble obeisances on behalf of everybody in this group who have joined and who are about to join. And I'd like to welcome Pooja Chiplumkar Mataji. She was there last week, but before I could welcome her, she had left. So thank you very much for joining in, Mataji. We meet every day at the same time, same link. So we'd appreciate if you can join in if you had the time. But to welcome you, we can chant 3 Haribols. So let us chant 3 Haribols for Pooja Mataji. Haribol.
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 Pooja Mataji, where are you joining us from?
Hare Krishna, Mataji. I'm joining from Canada, in Toronto.
Wow, that's good. Thank you for joining in.
Thank you.
This is surely is an international group. I'm very pleased. Okay, so over to you, Brijesh Prabhuji. Dandavat Pranam. I hand over to you. We are reading the Srimad Bhagavatam. We are on chapter 1, canto 1, chapter 4. Chapter 4 is the appearance of Sri Narada, and the text for today is text 30. Over to you, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Mataji. It seems like Bhuta Pavan Prabhu has brought an international audience. So that's good. But yeah. So yeah, thank you for the opportunity. I do pray. It's something that I know I'll probably end up sharing at some point, but I do pray that I'm always remembering and conscious that it's not me speaking when I'm speaking. I know I'm not saying one of Vyasas or anything, but it's Srila Vyasadeva and Krishna speaking through me, and I'm just an instrument in their hands. So I do pray that I always remember that whenever I give classes. So I thought, because we're coming to the end of the chapter, I thought it would be a good idea to just have a brief recap of what the chapter is about and what we've kind of seen and heard so far. So at the start of chapter 4, we heard that Shaunika Muni who's heading up the sages of Naimisharanya. He's addressing Sutta Goswami. And he's addressing Sutta Goswami with the idea and the desire to have the pious message of Srimad Bhagavatam related. And not just any sort of conversation of the Srimad Bhagavatam, but specifically that which Shukadev Goswami had spoken to Maharaj Parikshit. And there's quite a few questions that he poses related to the where, the when, the why, the hows. Specifically, if we look at it, he's asking about where did Vyasadeva get the inspiration to compile the Srimad Bhagavatam? How did Parikshit Maharaj meet Shukdev Goswami? And how Srimad Bhagavatam sung? You know, in verse 7, it specifically said sung. When we're reciting Srimad Bhagavatam, oftentimes we just speak the Sanskrit. But here, Srimad Bhagavatam is described as being sung by Srila Prabhupada in the translation. And then other questions involve, why did Parikshit Maharaj give everything up to hear the Srimad Bhagavatam, despite being full of youth, full of strength, despite having kingly opulences, you know, somebody who's got everything that he can desire. He gave it all up to sit at the banks of the river to hear Srimad Bhagavatam. And then the last part of the questioning is how Parikshit Maharaj could give up his body. You know, it wasn't his body actually. In the role of a king, he was actually the shelter for all the citizens. So actually his body didn't even belong to him, but he gave it up. The body belonged to the citizens, to the praja, but he still gave it up. Usually great souls give their body to serve everybody. You know, their body, their life is dedicated to serving. And his Parikshit Maharaj giving all of that up, giving up his service to his citizens, you know, at least externally speaking, to, again, sit at the banks and hear Srimad Bhagavatam. So these questions are posed. And then from text 14, we see that Sutta Goswami is progressively answering the questions. He begins by talking and narrating how Vyasadeva was born. And then the vision of the future state of Kali Yuga that Vyasadeva had, the contemplation that he had around the welfare activities, you know, what the state of Kali Yuga will get so bad, how can I help? As a great soul, he's thinking, how can I help? How can I actually perform some welfare for the society at large? And that led him to compiling the Vedic literatures, the 4 Vedas, the Puranas, the Itihasas, Mahabharata, etc. And what's the purpose behind them? The purpose behind them is for the purification, to attain liberation and ultimately for happiness of society, right? When we look at the Mahabharata, we see, okay, there's so many different elements. There's the sociology, there's the political, there's the family life, you know, so many different aspects of life are discussed and narrated, and even through the examples of Mahabharata. So Sri Vyasadev's performed such great welfare for the society through the literatures that he's compiled. But still, he's not satisfied. You know, and leading up to this, we see that, oh, he's, you know, I've done so much, but I'm not satisfied. And I was thinking about this just before this session, actually. Where the common man goes outside in times of distress, the great souls go inside in the times of distress. When we're going outside, we go, okay, you know, like obviously we're devotees here, so we don't go to the pubs, etc. But we go and seek the joys in the subtle elements, you know, maybe some cinema, maybe some TV, and so on and so forth. What does Srila Vyasadeva do? He goes inside. And what do I mean by going inside? He's reflecting, he's introspecting, he's contemplating on the cause of his distress. So this is one of the first things that we can really think about. When we're hearing, okay, when we're listening to classes, when we're reading, when we're performing our services, that could be, you know, I've got a few School of Bhakti members here, School of Bhakti services, Bhakti Vriksha services, temple services, whatever it may be, whatever services we're doing. Service here doesn't just include those services, but also the Shravanam, the Kirtanam, and everything else, chanting, reading, etc. But how are we doing those activities? You know, what's our presence of mind? Externally, we're present in those services, you know, like maybe we're cleaning the temple, like Mataji, I know you've got, you know, nice deities, you know, maybe you're like changing their garments, maybe you're offering puja, etc. Externally, we're doing all these activities, but what's our internal mood? What's our internal consciousness? What's our internal intention when we're doing those services? Are we satisfied? To what degree are we satisfied when we're doing those services? Because we hear from Srila Prabhupada all the time that actually the goal itself is service. So when we're performing the service, we should be satisfied in the service. But oftentimes we just do the service and then afterwards we're like, oh yeah, it's so nice. But are we actually satisfied when we're doing the service? And if we're not, then this is one level what Srila Vyasadeva is teaching us here. What's he teaching us? To go deeper, to really try to understand what's going on with us, to contemplate on the situation that we're in, on the quality of the service that we're performing, on the attitude of our service, right? Srila Vyasadeva's service up until now has been to compile the literatures, right? But he wasn't satisfied. But he went internal, he reflected, he introspected to really think about, okay, what is it that I'm missing? And when we do that, what happens? Krishna himself comes and helps us. Right? Many times we hear many devotees talk about, like I was struggling in this period of time and I prayed, and then Krishna revealed the way. Krishna actually reveals the way. And in Vyasadev's example, how did he reveal the way? We're kind of jumping the verse for today, but Srila Vyasadev's revelation comes through his spiritual master, Narada Muni. And as we know, the spiritual master is non-different to Krishna. So in the case of Vyasadeva, it's his spiritual master that came. So then we come to today's verse where Vyasadeva basically considers himself incomplete. And that's incomplete despite being fully qualified and skilled. Not as per the common man's sort of perception, but as required by the Vedas, right? In the translation, Srila Prabhupada uses the word, I myself am fully equipped with everything required by the Vedas. So in the purport, Srila Prabhupada actually starts the purport by saying, undoubtedly, Srila Vyasadeva was complete in all the details of Vedic achievements. What does it mean to actually be complete in all the details of Vedic achievements? Now, my understanding, and I'll be honest, I struggled with trying to understand what is it that Srila Prabhupada is trying to get at here. But then when we look at and read the second sentence of the purport, purification of the living being submerged in matter is made possible by the prescribed activities in the Vedas. So my understanding is that what Srila Prabhupada is talking about with regards to the details of Vedic achievements is the idea of the opulences obtained from Dharma, Artha, Kama, Moksha, right? The four goals of the material life. And in our scriptures, we have many, many examples of great personalities who are full of all these opulences. Not just like here, it's described that he was complete in all the details of Vedic achievements, right? Vyasadeva had the details. I mean, he was the one that was compiling the literatures that gave all these achievements. But in the scriptures, we have examples of those who actually attained those achievements, right? But still, they weren't complete. They were all still dissatisfied. They felt that there was something still lacking. There was something missing still. And we can use a crude example with Hiranyakashipu. He performed so many austerities. He understood the Vedic literatures inside out. He even understood the concept of Vishnu, right? The supreme personality of Godhead. In Canto 7 of the Srimad Bhagavatam, the pastime is described of how Varadev kills Hiranyaksha. And then in chapter 2, Hiranyakashipu, upon the death of his brother, he's basically imparting knowledge onto his brother, onto his mother, his sister-in-law, and his nephews. He's talking about how one shouldn't lament for the glorious death in battle. When Kshatriyas fight, it's actually glorious for them to pass away in a battle, especially if the opposite person is of a greater caliber. He's talking about karma, he's talking about the soul, he's talking about the coverings of the body. In one sense, he's giving a crash course on the journey of self-discovery. And this is a demon we're talking about, yeah? And like the modern concept, because we've got School of Bhakti, I've been told I should mention School of Bhakti a few times. So the School of Bhakti equivalent is like the Explore course or the Discover course, which is basically the journey of self-discovery in a way. So here's Hiranyakashipu and other examples like Ravan and so on and so forth. Very learned in the Vedic literatures. They understood and even achieved the material goals of the Vedic literatures. But we see that they did have like that selfish motive, right? That selfish intent. They attained all that stuff for their own enjoyment. And despite that, there's still always something that they were still missing. There was still always something that they still wanted. They were never satisfied with what they had. But then in the case of Vyasadeva, we also see he compiled so many Vedic literatures. He was so learned, the 4 Vedas, Mahabharata, the Puranas, Upanishads, etc. But he still wasn't satisfied, right? And what's the goal of all these literatures? Like we mentioned, happiness, liberation, purification. He performed such philanthropic, I can never say the word, philanthropic work, right? His intention was purely for everyone else's benefit. He was so concerned about the state of Kali Yuga. But even he wasn't satisfied, right? So there's the demons or the personalities that we see in the Srimad Bhagavatam who have that self-centered nature, intention. They aren't satisfied despite being so learning and so learned, so full of the Vedic knowledge. But then even Srila Vyasadeva, who compiled all this literature, selflessly, he's also not satisfied. They both had the proper systems and intelligence, they both were able to satisfy the means of how they were going to achieve their goal, right? They all still had their purpose, right? They knew how to satisfy the why, why they were doing what they were doing. Hiranyakashipu wanted name, fame, glory, etc. He wanted to be the most powerful personality. Vyasadeva wanted to selflessly serve and, compassionately give to everyone. But still they weren't satisfied because they were missing something. And in this verse, I am feeling incomplete. Vyasadeva is saying that he felt incomplete. So when we hear somebody say, oh, I feel incomplete, what do we think of? Think of, okay, they're not satisfied. There's something that's missing. They're feeling empty in some way. There's something, if not entirely, then there's something inside them that they're feeling empty about. And a prime example that I was thinking of is, a couple that have been together for decades. Then naturally what happens, with the course of time, one of them passes away. But they've been together through ups and downs, they're eating, honoring prasadam if they're devotees, or eating food, etc., whatever it is, morning, evening, in the afternoon, going on walks, going to the cinemas or whatever it is, they're doing things together. But as soon as one spouse passes away, all those activities are meaningless. They could go, maybe they have kids, grandchildren, they could do all those activities, but there's still a void in their heart. They still feel, I'm doing all this, but it's not the same. Something is missing because the person that they attributed everything to is missing. And there's like 3 levels of incompleteness that we can see, right? That we can identify within the material world. So what are they, One is the externals. Okay, like, oh, I want to be somebody. I want to do something with my life. I want to be a millionaire. I want that massive, 10-acre land mansion. I want all the supercars in the world, But I can't reach it. I'm like getting closer, but I'm never getting there. I'm trying, but I keep failing and failing. So they feel incomplete, I've got this goal, I've got this desire, but for some reason, I'm not able to attain it. That's one level. Second level, I've achieved my goals, I've got that 10-acre land, got that mansion with a swimming pool, with, butlers at every door, holding the door open for me, got 2 of each supercar, there's Noah's Ark, for those who kind of are familiar with that sort of background, where there's 2 of every animal going on the boat. But here we have a millionaire who's got 2 of every supercar at his doorstep, but still they're incomplete. Why? Because they don't have meaningful relationships, right? People to share it with, People want things because they want to be happy, but that happiness, they do realize at some point that actually I can only be happy with all this stuff if I've got somebody to share it with, wife, children, girlfriend, whatever it is. And then the third level, they've got the material opulence. They've even got the family, the friends to share it with. But actually, they're still missing something. They're still lacking, despite the externals being in place, despite the internals being in place, despite the relationships around them being in place, despite having the money, the family, the friends, the supercars, they're still missing something. So what happens afterwards? Then we start seeing, okay, I tried satisfying myself, that didn't work. I tried satisfying my family, that didn't work. I tried satisfying my community, even that's not working. Let me try and satisfy the world, but even that doesn't work. They get to a state whereby they start exploring, okay, right, you know, my sense grat isn't working, my family's sense grat isn't working, so let me do something selflessly. Let me try and do something for a higher purpose, a bigger cause. Let me donate, let me work for a bigger cause. But because it's all material, they still feel dissatisfied. There's still always something that's still missing. And we can see Vyasadeva was in this dilemma. You know, despite being the literary incarnation of Godhead, he felt incomplete despite compiling all these Vedic literatures that talked about Dharma, Artha, Kama, and Moksha. Right? He was out helping the community at large. You know, we have what Bill Gates, etc., setting up like I don't know. I think it's called like the Gates Foundation or something like that. You know, he still only helped a small society. But here's Vyasadeva compiling literatures nonstop, and he's done so much for society. You know, with all these Vedic literatures, like even if you look at modern science, a lot of it is based on Vedic literature in reality. If it's not based on it, it's getting to it. But still, he's dissatisfied, right? So when Vyasadeva, the compiler of these Vedic literatures, himself is dissatisfied when he's done all of this work, then how can those who are reading these literatures feel satisfied? Right? When the author himself is not satisfied with what he's compiled, how can those who are reading the author's works be satisfied? Right? He recognized that there was something missing. He recognized that there's something even higher than the selfless service that he's doing in the name of Dharma, Artha, Kama, Moksha. And this is something we can take away as well from Vyasadeva. The acknowledgement of the feeling, right? He wasn't in denial that, oh, you know, I've done so much, I'm actually feeling, you know, really good inside. No, he accepted that, hey, you know, I've done so much, but I'm not feeling it still. There's still something missing. He wasn't in denial. He was fully ready to embrace and accept. But what do? You know, oh, you know, that devotee, they hurt me. It's okay. It's okay. Hare Krishna, Prabhu Mataji, they hurt me. It's okay. You know, and then what do? Okay, 7 p.m. in the evening. Oh, let me just check Facebook for a bit. Oh, you know, that devotee, that was a really nice dress that that devotee wore. Okay, let me go to Instagram for a bit. Oh, that's a really good yoga exercise. I should try that one day. You know, we just use social media. We just use all these distractions to pretend we don't have these emotions or feelings. That's what we do, right? Facebook, I don't know what else is there, TikTok or Instagram or I don't know, Snapchat. I don't know. Yeah, that's Snapchat. So many things that we use to distract ourselves from our own feelings, to distract ourselves from acknowledging what we're going through. But what does that actually do for us? Temporarily, it's like, you know, gets us away from the emotions. But reality is, by us denying our feelings, by us denying our emotions, what we're doing is actually even more detrimental than just the scrolling. What we're doing is that we're delaying our self-realization. We're wasting an opportunity for us to grow closer towards Krishna. Because we see it all the time. Throughout Srimad Bhagavatam, Mahabharata, Bhagavad-Gita, Arjuna was in distress. In distress, he went to Krishna. And through going to Krishna, not only was his distress, eliminated, but he became self-realized. I mean, Arjun's a pure soul, so he was acting for us, basically. But we see time and time again throughout our Vedic literatures, throughout Srimad Bhagavatam, that when they are in distress, they go to Krishna and they attain a higher state of consciousness. But what do? Even as devotees, even though we have Krishna at our fingertips, whether in deity form, in devotee form, in sadhu form, in guru form, in literature form, we go, I'm upset, I'm going to go to my phone, I'm going to go to my social media, or whatever it happens to be. For me, it used to be gaming. I'll put my hand up. Right? I used to be a very big video gamer. And why do we do that? Oftentimes we think that Krishna consciousness is like a straight path. If you're not going forward in Krishna consciousness, you're just going backwards. So it's like, okay, well, the devotee hurt me, so instead of going forwards, I'll just go, let me do something material, let me go backwards. But actually we see that Krishna consciousness is very much like a river, right? A river starts in the mountains and goes to the ocean, but it's not a direct path, right? How does it go? It has many rocks, exactly. It has many rocks, obstacles, so many different things, challenges, right? In one way, they're challenges for the river to get to the ocean, to get to its destination. Sometimes it goes over the rocks, sometimes it goes around the rocks, sometimes it goes under the rocks. It's always meandering around, right? And we need to learn to be able to do that as well. We need to learn that, okay, I need to move forward in Krishna consciousness. But sometimes that moving forward in Krishna consciousness doesn't mean it's a direct path. Sometimes it means that we have to meander around the obstacles that are coming our way. And that might mean that we have to face the obstacle head on and trust Krishna that we will fly over it. When we see waves crashing on the rocks, we see that the waves do, if the wave is strong enough, it will just crash over and jump over it. We try to deal with things ourselves. We tend to have this mentality that there's something wrong with me, but we don't introspect, we don't think about, what's going on. We don't reveal our mind to other devotees. And even when we do, we don't really explain what's going on. We just go like, yeah, I've got this problem, it's okay. Time, just give me a few days and we sort it. We refuse to acknowledge our shortcomings, our unwanted feelings. We refuse to go to the root of the problem. And there's a nice analogy here around a patient and a doctor, right? We're the patient here, right? If we go to the doctor and go, doctor, there's something wrong with me, what's the doctor going to say? Here's a pill, the Mahamantra, go chant and everything's done, you'll be sorted for life. No, the doctor's going to go, okay, tell me more. What's your problem? Do you cut your finger? What happened? If stomach ache, toothache, too much sweets, They ask these questions. And we have to tell him the symptoms, right? We have to know what symptoms we're having and tell him the symptoms so that the doctor can help us. I mean, Kritika Mataji, you're in some way very much close to this, right? If somebody comes to you and is like, oh, I've got a problem, like you're going to want to know what the problem is so you know how best to help them. So we actually really need to think about it, and we really need to acknowledge, it starts with acknowledgement. We have to accept that this is what we're going through. And once we identify the symptoms, then we can be best placed to seek that guidance that we need to get out of it. And this is what Vyasadeva did. He introspected, he went inside, he tried to understand what is it that, is really irritating him, even though he's done so much. And in the end, Krishna helped by sending Narada Muni to help him clear his doubts, to make sure that, yes, what I was thinking was correct. And that for us is the devotees, that for us are the sadhus, the gurus, even the Shastra. Sometimes we even feel that, because something that often comes up is, oh, in the Bhagavad-Gita, Krishna says, oh, we should be equiposed, happiness, distress, just stay dhira, stay equiposed. Don't think about it too much. Really? For purpose of time, I'll just read the translation. This is Bhagavad-Gita 5.20. A person who neither rejoices upon achieving something pleasant, nor laments upon obtaining something unpleasant, who is self-intelligent, who is unbewildered, and who knows the science of God, is already situated in transcendence. I repeat the last part, is already situated in transcendence. Such a person is already living, beyond most of us, at least if I speak for myself, right? This verse isn't telling us to be artificially suppressing our feelings. It's by advancement that we actually start to realize, actually, you know what? The feelings that are coming from the lower natures, from the lower modes of nature, they don't really have much meaning for us, right? It's the advancement that helps us realize that. Equanimity, or something like being calm and like having composure in our sort of state of mind, in our being, doesn't mean that we don't have emotions, that we don't have feelings. What it means is that our emotions, our feelings have purpose behind them, one, and what we do with them has a purpose. And we can see in Mahabharata again, when Abhimanyu was trapped in the Chakravyu, right? And then, all the Kauravas basically started breaking the laws of warfare and killed him. Arjun wasn't present. But as soon as Arjun found out, what did he do? It's okay, Abhimanyu, it's okay, death is a part of life. Oh, well, move on. He didn't do that. What did he do, right? He cried. Krishna was present there, next to him. He still cried. We're devotees. Krishna's there for us. It doesn't mean that we don't cry when something's happening that is affecting us. What it means is that just as Arjun was crying and he sought this shelter of Krishna, Krishna gave him his shoulder. But we also go to Krishna and Krishna will give us his shoulder. But what's even more magnanimous is that what did Arjun do afterwards, right? After that small little initial sorrow, that immediate sorrow that hit him, acknowledging it, going through that feeling, what did he do? He lamented for days. He quit the Mahabharata war. He swore to never fight again. No. What he did was that he accepted, he acknowledged, he went through that initial emotion of sorrow. But instead of lamenting, he used that emotion, he used that in one way, that anger, that hatred, that sorrow, for a higher purpose. He took a vow to then go kill Jayadratha, who was the cause of Abhimanyu's death in one way, right? Because then the other Pandavas couldn't go and protect him. So he used it for the higher purpose of fulfilling Krishna's desires as well. So what can we learn from this? We can't control our emotions, right? I mean, Krishna is the ultimate controller. Who are we to control our emotions? But what we can do is we can control the attention that we give our emotions, both from how much we're giving attention to them, but also the quality of the attention that we're giving. One thing is, oh, this bad thing happened, so sad, or so much self-pity, like, why does it always happen to me? What did I do? Go in that downward spiral. Or we could accept, acknowledge that this has happened. Okay, what can I do to either change the circumstance, change the situation, or raise my consciousness, right? We have to learn to separate ourselves from the emotion. We are not the emotion, right? When we're feeling sad, it's not that we are the sadness. We're going through something because our mind, our material senses are going through an emotion. It's all part of the material nature. But we should acknowledge that they're there. Go through what we need to go through, but with the intent and with the mindset of, how am I going to come out of this, and how am I going to use this in a higher purpose? How am I going to use it to, use that emotion to serve in a greater capacity. You know, one example that really comes to mind is Jankanath Prabhu. And I think probably most of the devotees on this call will probably be familiar with Jankanath Prabhu, because I think he did visit Eldoret at some point. But yeah, he's a great personality. He had cancer for many years and he passed away last year. But he didn't use that cancer and like start questioning, like if he was a monk, a saffron monk at the manor. He didn't use that cancer and like go, okay, you know, like I just need to think about myself. I need to like sort myself out. No, he used that cancer to preach. You know, that was his consciousness. He used something that most of us will think, how can we do this? You know, this is happening to me. Like, what do I do now? He used that to preach. He used something that was killing him to preach. That shows us how much we can elevate our consciousness. So if we go back to Srila Vyasadeva, right? His selfless service, compiling all these Vedic literatures, talking about the material goals of life, you know, it was all born out of his compassion. But he missed the one key element that led him to feel incomplete. The ultimate goal, right? The highest purpose, right? The welfare is there, but what's the highest welfare that he could have done? He missed it, right? It's like you're traveling along the highway or the motorway, 70 miles per hour, whatever. You got so busy in like doing all these other things with the car, you know? Oh yeah, I can do this part of the car, I can do that in the car, I can do this in the car. You missed the exit, you know? You forgot that your destination to get on the road was to get off on that exit to get to your destination. But you got so attached to looking after how the car is working, to looking after the immediate aspects of the journey on the road, that you forgot that the ultimate goal was to get off the exit so that you could get to your destination. So that's what Vyasadev's state was, in a way, right? He got so concerned about the immediate welfare of everyone that he forgot that actually he needed to raise them to the state of God consciousness, Krishna consciousness, right? Love of Godhead is the highest goal. He didn't go through that negative downward spiral. Oh, you know, like I've done all this. Why, you know, like, what am I doing wrong? No, he introspected and he got to the realization, you know, in the next few chapters, we'll kind of, in the next few verses, we'll see that he got to that realization that actually he understood that the highest goal is what he missed. Krishna Vishayaka Prema Parama Parushartha Yara Age Trina Tulya Chari Purushartha. Religiosity, economic development, sense gratification, and liberation are known as the 4 goals of life. But before love of Godhead, the 5th and highest goal, these appear as insignificant as straw in the street. This is from Chaitanya Charitamrita, the Adilila 784. So we kind of heard about this yesterday, where the world is searching after happiness in Dharma, Artha, Kama, and even moksha in some respect. But that search for happiness in material means doesn't lead to happiness at all, in fact. It leads to more and more distress, more and more miseries in life. And in one way, isn't that what this verse is saying? That the 4 goals of life, right, are nothing. They're insignificant in comparison to the love of Godhead. So what is that process that helps us develop love of Godhead, right? That process we know is the highest process. And that process is that process which helps us attain Prema. Prema is that love of Godhead, right? And that Prema makes Krishna happy and thus also us happy. Such a process we can describe through the literatures as well. There's like 2 very good analogies here. One is feeding the stomach, right? When we want to nourish the body, we want to nourish ourselves, our family, our community, our society, the world, you know, all the living entities, Mother Nature itself. We can feed the stomach. The stomach nourishes the whole body. The whole body functions off of the stomach being nourished. If the stomach is not nourished, the body isn't nourished. You can do whatever you want, you know. You can decorate the fingers nicely. You can paint your nails, you know. But if the stomach isn't nourished, how much, you know, joy is anybody going to get out of painting nails? And the other analogy is around watering the roots of a plant. You know, you can water and spray the leaves, the stems, the twigs, but actually what matters is if you water the roots, right? That's what sustains the tree. So until and unless we are nourishing the core aspects, the root or the stomach, then no matter how much we endeavor, right, it's always going to feel like something's missing, right? You can paint your nails, you can do whatever you want, you know. Mathajis a lot these days love, apologies, this isn't a complaint about Mathajis today, but you know, they love wearing makeup, you know, so many different things that you know, it's fine, you know, they like to look beautiful, etc. That's cool. But if they're not nourishing, if they're not eating themselves, you know, they're never going to decorate their body with makeup, etc. at the expense of food in their stomach, right? Because they realize that if they're nourished from the inside, then they realize that the externals will actually matter. And we can see even the material world, you know, everything is meaningless without devotional service, right? Krishna, if things are absent from Krishna, then what are they? You know, they're all just a big fat zero, right? If you look at relationships, well, relationships, anything in this material world is temporary, right? Temporary, or it leads us to misery, right? Chapla shuka, right? Flickering happiness. Sometimes we get it, sometimes we don't. Even the times we get it, it's temporary. So in the end, even though in the moment you might think, oh, you know, there's something big here, there's something strong here, but if there's no Krishna in there, it's just a big zero. And it doesn't matter how many zeros we have, you know, could have, I don't know, a nice spouse, children, car, money, bank balance, you know, house, whatever it is, you could have all these things, but without Krishna, it's just a zero. You're just accumulating all your zeros together. But what actually happens as we go through the 3 stages of feeling incomplete? Externals aren't there. Okay, we've tried to fulfill the externals, still incomplete. Now we have the internals, you know, the relationships. Okay, that's there, but it's still incomplete. So all you're doing is just adding zeros that are making you feel more and more depressed, because you understand that actually what I thought was going to give me happiness isn't giving me happiness. It's just giving me more distress, more misery. So one has to come to the point of realizing that this isn't the happiness that I was actually after. But once we add Krishna into the mix, right? Krishna, the one, you know, then everything changes, right? Everything has meaning then. You might just have one thing. Maybe you just have, I don't know, a spouse, you know, maybe that's the only thing you have in the material world, you know, you have a consciousness whereby you're saying, I at least have my spouse with me still, you know, no matter what's going on in life, I still have my spouse. That zero, when Krishna comes into the middle, just becomes a 10. Maybe you have hundreds of things, you know, hundreds of zeros. But with Krishna, that 100 becomes 1,000. You know, the 100 zeros now become 1,000. And that's what this path of Krishna consciousness is there for, is to help revive our consciousness that actually it's only with Krishna that we will ever feel complete. Prabhupada then goes on to say that unless it is attained, and he's talking about this ultimate goal, right? The prema aspect. Unless it is attained, the living being, even though fully equipped, cannot be situated in the transcendently normal stage. Srila Vyasadeva appeared to have lost the clue and therefore felt dissatisfaction. Vyasadeva lost the clue of the ultimate goal of life and thus felt dissatisfaction. Isn't that most of us, even as devotees? We get so hung up in, you know, so many different aspects of Krishna consciousness that we forget about Krishna in the process. Devotee association. Oh yeah, I'm with devotees. Forgot about Krishna in the devotee association. No longer devotee association, is it? Ah, yes, I'm cooking bhoga. I'm cooking for Krishna, the prasadam. Oh yeah, you know what? I really like this food. I'll cook it. I'll cook it for Krishna. And whilst you're cooking, forget Krishna. I'm gonna enjoy this after I've offered it. I'll at least add that much after I've offered it. Through the introspection that Vyasadeva went through, he realized that everything he's written was a big fat zero until he wrote that literature, until he gets to that stage of writing and talking about the ultimate goal. What was that literature? Srimad Bhagavatam, right? The literature that teaches us how to develop our dormant love of God. In fact, in one of the purports, Srila Prabhupada actually talks about how Srimad Bhagavatam is completely devoid of the Dharma, Artha, Kama, Moksha aspects, the four goals of normal mundane life, right? It's completely discarded from Srimad Bhagavatam. So, just conscious of time. Okay, so I'll end with one thing. So, verse again, but for the meditation on this, we can really think about, okay, if Vyasadeva was engaged in compiling all these literatures, right, about the dharmas, about the different religions, but he felt so incomplete. And this is from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 1, Chapter 2, verse 6. Sarve pumsam paro dharmo yato bhaktiradhokshaje ahoitukya pritahata yayatma suprasidati. The supreme occupation, or the Dharma, for all humanity is that by which men can attain to loving devotional service unto the transcendent Lord. Such devotional service must be unmotivated and uninterrupted to completely satisfy the self. We talk about so many different dharmas, even within Krishna consciousness. We think, okay, I need to associate with this devotee, I need to give time to that devotee, I need to do this activity, that activity, so many different things. But the ultimate, the supreme occupation, even amongst all of that, is that which helps us attain to loving devotional service unto the transcendent Lord. That too specifically, in its highest form, being unmotivated and uninterrupted. And that, dear devotees, is what will completely satisfy the self. Sri Vyasadeva goes on to compile the Srimad Bhagavatam, and he is satisfied because he has described that which helps one attain to loving devotional service unto the transcendent Lord. Srila Prabhupada's given us the Srimad Bhagavatam. We have so many devotees. I mean, Eldoret has devotees discussing Srimad Bhagavatam on a daily basis. How fortunate are we? Vyasadeva was incomplete before Srimad Bhagavatam, just as our life has been incomplete without Srimad Bhagavatam. And now we have the Srimad Bhagavatam. Are we valuing it as much as Srila Vyasadeva valued it after compiling it? After Srila Prabhupada valued it after giving it to us? Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you, Prabhuji, for an excellent class today. Before we go on to the questions, I would like to acknowledge School of Bhakti. Thank you for joining in. And I'm giving you all the plus points, Prabhuji. And also we have Ramana Prabhuji. So welcome, Prabhuji, to the group. We are really grateful that all of you can make it. And of course, today we have our mentor, Mansi Ganga Mataji, as well, who has joined the group. So, and obviously the regular devotees. Thank you all for joining in. Okay, so we open up for questions and answers and comments. Are there any questions and answers and comments? Yes, Sandhya, kindly unmute and ask your question.
Hare Krishna, Jyotika Mataji, Prabhuji, and all devotees. Sorry for the background noise. Prabhuji, all that you have said, if you were to kind of 13-year-old, say, who has been taken away from a parent, has been put in foster care. Of course, she feels that it's so unfair, now suffering, say, mental health issues. Would you be able to convey the same thing to her in, would they understand, the 13-year-old, would they understand all this? Or how would you change the way you kind of convey them this message is what I'm trying to find out. Hare Krishna.
Krishna. Thank you for that question. I'm just conscious that the voice was below, so I'll just kind of repeat the question. So the question was in regards to how would we convey this message to a 13-year-old child who's probably, been through so much in life, been put in foster care, so many different things have happened, and now they're struggling, right? Their consciousness isn't there to appreciate that actually there's something good here. So the thing that comes to mind, Mataji, is around how we as devotees can express compassion and love and care in different ways. Some people, some devotees, some general people are attracted to philosophy. Some people are attracted to arts, creativity. Some people are attracted to many, many different things. But what is the one thing that the child who is in that sort of situation really wants and needs? Somebody to love, somebody to care, somebody to appreciate, somebody to be there for them, right? So yes, what we're discussing today, what I primarily focus on, in all honesty, because I'll put my hand up, kind of being soft on philosophy is not really my thing. I'm somebody who very much thrives on philosophy. But philosophy isn't the way to explain to a 13-year-old. It's actually to simply show them that love, that care. When they get attracted to us as the devotee, when they start trusting us, especially as a 13-year-old child, they'll start trusting our values. And when we can show that our values come from Krishna consciousness, they'll appreciate it more. So it's not that we have to put the philosophy down their throat and go, no, this is a good situation for you. This is how it is, accept it. It's the best thing that happened to you. No, we can be that kind, compassionate, loving, caring person in their life and help them see the brighter side of Krishna consciousness through our love, not through the philosophy, but through our love. I don't know if that answers your question, Sandhya Mataji.
Yes, Prabhuji, thank you so much. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, are there any other questions or comments? Till devotees are thinking of questions or comments, I can ask a question, Prabhuji, if I may. Prabhuji, so sometimes we are brought up, some of us are brought up not to show our emotions, and showing emotions is a sign of weakness. So that is the mindset you have grown up with. And then suddenly you have been told, okay, now you have to reveal yourself. At least whatever you feel, you should be telling it out. It's a good thing. And even psychologists say is not to bottle up your feelings. But how do we deal with people who have a mindset of just bottling up and not sharing because they feel if they shared it, and this is very common in men, I feel, that they don't reveal their feelings, they don't reveal what they are going through. And women talk it out. And before Facebook and things, we used to have women's groups and kitty parties where we used to go and bitch about our in-laws and the husband and etc. But it's difficult for men to reveal their feelings. So how do we get them to reveal what is upsetting them, or ask them to go to Krishna consciousness? Or ask
Every
help
man wants to be the macho man who is, completely hard in muscle, hard in heart, and everything.
Yeah.
But actually, as you put it rightly, right, they're the ones that struggle with it the most, because actually their heart is even softer than women's oftentimes, but they just don't know how to convey it because of what you mentioned. They struggle because of the upbringing and everything else. No, it's a very, very valid and very interesting question here, because especially because you explicitly call out men, right?
And some women
The
are
first-
hard-hearted
yeah,
as
yeah.
well.
Yeah, the one thing that started to come to my mind before you explicitly called out the men aspect, because now I have to think about this a bit more, is how one of the things that really helps is when a person feels like they can trust and has a deep relationship with somebody, that then they themselves feel comfortable just revealing everything and anything to them. When you have that bond with somebody, it doesn't have to be the spouse. Oftentimes it's just another friend, where you're like, you know I can just share everything, non-judgmental, you know, that they won't reveal to anyone else. They'll keep the confidentiality, and then they'll just happily just reveal away. They just start being apparent, and like, you know, even when you want them to stop, they won't stop. They'll just keep talking about it, just letting the load off, as they say. So that's one thing whereby it's a struggle, but it's a long process. And I think this definitely applies to men as well, like the hard-hearted, let me put it that way, right? Those who try to be the macho, hard-hearted person, where it's just a matter of time until they realize that actually they can trust you, etc., etc. But you obviously have to work on that relationship to get to that point. Takes months, takes years sometimes. But depending on what that relationship with that person is like for you, then it might be worth it, you know, for you to give them that space to go, okay, it's taken you a year to kind of come to a place whereby you can just reveal to me, offload. But that trust is key, that confidentiality, that trust, and that non-judgmental aspect is key. But the other thing, which I think is really important here, is that sometimes the reason for somebody bottling things up stems from something that is not between you and the person. Oftentimes something from childhood that they've gone through. Yes, the upbringing is there whereby they might be taught to kind of be like this, but oftentimes it might even come from a specific situation that happened that led them to kind of become like this, whereby they just feel it's best if they don't speak their views, you know. And in those cases, you know, I'm not really in a place to kind of say this officially, but I'd probably suggest and say that try and get to the bottom of it. If you can't, then see if you can get help for that person to at least acknowledge, you know, like we were talking about, acknowledging that feeling. If they can just acknowledge that they're going through this, they're feeling like this because of something, then it opens the door, right? It's like 50% of the battle's won, because now they're like ready to speak to somebody. They'll be more open to it. Therapy, you know, like speaking to psychologists, etc., can then help them kind of get over that barrier to get over it. I don't know if other devotees who are more experienced in that matter, especially from the psychology side, or have any thoughts on this. Be good to know, actually.
Thank you, Prabhuji. And maybe if they had a relationship, if they started their journey with Krishna consciousness, and they are trying to build a relationship with Krishna, probably they might think that he's the one that they should go to, because he's not going to judge them. He's going to accept them any which way. So maybe that might be another path. Yes, definitely going to a psychiatrist and a psychologist, but knowing their real, who they really are might help as well.
And we see here Vyasadeva as well. He felt incomplete. But what did Krishna do? When he introspected, when he was going deeper, he sent Narad Muni. So Krishna can also work in that way, where yes, you know, completely right. They might develop their Krishna consciousness to the sense that, okay, even though I don't trust the devotees, I trust Krishna and reveal to Krishna. But then Krishna will work his magic and send the devotees to help them out.
Thank you very much. Are there any other questions or comments?
So I do have one that was privately messaged. I don't know if the devotee wants me to reveal the name, so I'll just leave it blank for now. Hare Krishna Prabhu, question: we find that in other scriptures, such as the Puranas, Mahabharata, etc., the pastimes of the Lord and devotional service in awe and reverence are described. can he speak for the benefit of the audience what Bhagavatam specifically elaborates on, i.e. the sweet Madhurya pastimes between the devotees and Krishna? This is a very big topic. So it's true. Many of the Puranas, even like within Christian consciousness, we have the Ishopanishad, which is heavily, talking about the supremacy of the Lord. But one thing is that what the Srimad Bhagavatam gives us is that relationship with the Lord. Even when we look at the material world, we can see celebrities, prime minister, government positions, kings, queens, etc. We look at them with opulence. We're like, oh, like they're so great. Maybe we like them, as well. And we're like, like they're so great. But we are always going to be distant from them because that awe and reverence is always there. So that's one aspect of Krishna, right? Whereby he is that supreme personality of Godhead. He is the one who we do worship with awe and reverence because he's full in all six opulences. That's one aspect of him. But in that relationship, right, with us, with the king, with the queen, with the prime minister, with the president, whoever it is, we don't have that personal relationship with them. But when we look at, even from a material, temporary world perspective, what is it that gives us happiness, right? In reality, what gives happiness? You see billionaires, millionaires committing suicide because they have all the money, but they don't have anybody. But you see the street paupers in, India, Africa, etc. They might have no money, but if they've got somebody, they're still happy and satisfied. So we realize from just looking at the material world that relationships is what is giving us happiness. The material world is just a perverted reflection of the spiritual world. Relationships give us happiness here. So relationships definitely give us happiness there. The relationships give us temporary and chapla shuka happiness here, flickering happiness here. Then what's the perturbed reality in the spiritual world? It's the eternal, the constant, the fulfillment of the happiness there. And this is what Srimad Bhagavatam gives us, right? Srimad Bhagavatam isn't a literature that just talks about Krishna, Krishna and his pastimes, just him and himself, He's walking down a blank cavern, a void space, and he's just fully happy and himself. No, it talks about Krishna's relationship with his devotees. And that relationship is what the Srimad Bhagavatam is based on. It's the different relationships. And we can see from that how much love, how much sweetness there is in all these relationships. And we can see from the fact that we love and enjoy relationships here, how much more would that relationship be when it's with Krishna? And that's what the Srimad Bhagavatam especially gives us. That relationship with Krishna for us. Awe and reverence is there from all the Puranas, but that didn't give happiness to Sri Vyasadeva because the relationship was never talked about. So I hope that answers the question to the devotee. Yeah, if anybody has anything to add, that'd be nice. So.
Hare Krishna, are there any questions, other questions and comments? I know we have passed our time by 8 minutes, and I apologize for that. If there are no questions or comments, then probably I will hand over to Prahlad Prabhu. Prahlad Prabhu, are you around? If you can close, thank our speaker and close the session, please. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Are you able to hear me?
Yes.
Yes. Yes. So first, I would like to start off by thanking His Grace Brijesh Prabhu for this wonderful class, and the very broad topic at hand, which is happiness. One cannot derive happiness from this material world. It's very hard. We have multiple desires, but we are not satisfied. So eternal happiness is the only way to be liberated. And that is by going back to Godhead. So thank you, Prabhu, for this wonderful class and elaboration on the Srimad Bhagavatam. Thank you so much. I would also like to thank the devotees for joining in and taking out, some time out from their busy schedules and, devoting their time, which is just 1 hour, to listen to His Grace Brijesh Prabhu, and also, devote their time as well to Krishna himself. So thank you all for joining in. And on behalf of ISKCON Eldoret Prabhu, we thank you. So I would like to kindly request all the devotees assembled to please unmute yourselves and let's chant the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra once for His Grace Brijesh Prabhu. Hare Krishna,
Krishna, Hare
Krishna
Krishna,
Krishna,
Hare
Krishna,
Hare
Hare Hare,
Hare
Hare
Hare,
Rama,
Hare
Hare
Rama,
Rama,
Rama Rama,
Rama Rama,
Hare
Hare
Hare.
Hare.
one chant.
Vancha
Krishna.
Hindutya eva cha patitanam pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namo.
Srila Prabhupada ki
Jai,
Jai. His Grace Brijesh Prabhu ki
Jai,
Jai.
ISKCON
Gaur
Eldoret
Premanande.
ki.
Jai.
Jai Jai. Haribo.
Haribo.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.